Beyond the level of insurance, I want to talk a little bit about banking and know your customer, know your investor. This is another kind of an application that has tremendous potential for blockchain. And I want to talk about some specific things with tracking individuals with blockchain. We see some interesting potential for know your customer. Banks spend a huge amount of money complying with federal regulations to know what their customers do so that they have comply with anti-money laundering laws. At one large bank, they figure that 100 billion is spent a year by banks in this process. And that's a huge amount of money. And this cost is increasing, not decreasing. In 2016, it increased 17%. In 2017, 18%. And the numbers are not really available yet for 2018. It takes a while to be able to analyze this information and figure it out. Also, this is a tremendous driving factor for keeping and retaining customers. 19% of customers figure that they changed banks because of Know Your Customer. So let's say that you are a person that sells something like guns and you'd like to be able to sell this stuff, but you go to your bank and they find out that you sell guns, and consequently they say, nope, we won't take your business. Because if we take your business, then we will automatically, as a bank, get subject to extended scrutiny by the Securities and Exchange Commission, by the FDIC. And they don't want to take that risk, so they boot you out. So knowing your customer and what they do would be a tremendous thing. And if you can track what customers do, or you could provide a certification system for customers that says that this particular customer is known to do a particular kind of business and track that reliably on a blockchain, that would be something that banks would be eager to acquire that data, and customers would want to provide it because that means that they have less risk to the bank and they have to pay less fees to a bank, I would expect, when they're less risk. So this is a way of actually transferring risk from the banks out to a system of verification on a blockchain and meeting that particular demand. This would be something where you'd have a token that accurately tracks and identifies customers. For Know Your Investor, KYI, the same sort of thing could happen. An investor could go to some authority that checks whether or not they are a certified investor. For lots and lots of investments, you have to be a certified investor, which means you have to have either a net worth of $2.3 million or a demonstrated income that you have reported of at least $1 million a year for the past 2 years, or having been an officer in a company. And these things can be checked, but it's not trivial to check this. And you would like to invest in some local startup, but you have to be a certified investor. And to prove this, you've got to, before you do an investment, give them copies of your tax returns and your bank accounts, or give them proof of what you've been doing over the past years, and have your background checked. This kind of a background check could be done once instead of once for every time you invest. And if it's done once, then you've taken that expense and that process and basically turned it into a single thing that then you could have a certified token, a marker for this proof of documentation and whether or not you meet these criteria. So another thing that's come up recently is tracking individuals that have recovered from SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus. MIT is working on this, and a tracking system. Basically, if a person has recovered from this virus, then they ought to be able to go back to work because they can't get it. At least that's the hope, although we haven't seen proof of that yet. But it sure looks, from information that we're seeing coming out of Italy and France and China right now, that this is in fact the case. Cross your fingers and hope that's the case. So you'd like a tracking system like this, but you don't really want to provide a giant tracking system like what China has for social tracking and tracking every person everywhere they go. So on your smartphone, you load some sort of an application that receives a token from a blockchain, and that token changes every 30 minutes. And your token that you're giving out via Bluetooth to other people is a combination of a private token and that time-based token that are XORed together. So you have a hash token that you are giving out. And say you get that unfortunate message that, oh, by the way, somebody got tested and they've been exposed to the virus. And so you want to know if you are the person and who you were in contact with. Contact tracing for the virus is very difficult and very expensive and very time consuming and highly error prone, because the way it's done now is you go ask the person who's exposed, where did you go and who did you see? And they don't remember lots of people, so it's very error prone. With a system that's based on tokens and Bluetooth and your phone, you simply report that, yes, here I am, and here's my private key portion. And now the people doing the contact tracing can say, okay, what are all the phones from the date you were exposed or the hour you were exposed to the present time that you've been in contact with? And they immediately have the ability to do much more accurate contact tracing. And since as long as you're not exposed, your private key remains completely private, and it's changing, nobody can reverse engineer this information easily to trace you and violate your privacy. You still have privacy, but you can provide the data for contact tracing. And there's a group working at MIT specifically on this exact thing and using a blockchain to produce those time-based keys to do this. So we have a decentralized source for the keys that's reliable. Okay, the last piece for today is I'm going to go over what is in the next homework, and we'll take a look at that.